So our task here is to create a text class, and I kind of hinted at the reason why earlier, but if we look here in main, you can see we're creating our text object, or our text sprite. Whoa. Okay, we're creating our text sprite here, here, and here, and you can see that we're constantly creating the same three variables over and over again, right? So if we had a text class, what we could do instead is simply replace this with one line of code where we create a text object, right? Same thing here and same thing here. That results in less lines of code, which is always better. Okay, so that's one reason why. Another reason why is because of that whole fiasco that we had down here, where we had to insert this logic into our screen blitting portion of our code. And the reason why we had to do that is because when we passed the left score image to ball update, and then up in ball update we rendered that we re-rendered the image, it does not affect the original image down here in main, right? Why? Because this is simply a variable, right? Creating a text object would solve that problem, because as we've noticed here, well, maybe we haven't noticed it here, but if you pass an object as an argument to a method or a function, and then in the method or in the function you change an instance variable's value, that value is changed wherever you use that object. Okay, so that's the difference between a regular variable and an object, right? And so what could we do? We could just go ahead and pass the text object here, and then up in ball update we could adjust we could re-render the image instance variable of that text object, and then when it comes down here it would be affected, because here we would be using the text object's image, and then we would see the change on the screen. Okay, so those are two of the reasons why we are going to be creating a text class. And so let's go ahead and get started. We come up to the top of our program. Text classes like to have two spaces above and below them, so make sure you hit enter there, and we'll say class text, and then we'll hit enter. We need to create a constructor, right? Every class has a constructor, because a class is a collection of variables, and the constructor creates those variables and initializes them to their first value, right? So then now what we want to come downstairs to our first text sprite, right? And let's go ahead and just like copy this code, and we'll bring it up here just to get an idea of what instance variables we need to create for our text class. And so we do need a font, so let's do self.font. We do need to render, and so here we would do self.image, because every object that's on the screen has an image and it has a rect. Okay, so and those are the two most important parts of every object that's on the screen. So I'm going to do self.rect here instead of title rect, and then I'll do that again down here, and here I'll use self.rect, 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 and then here I'm going to use self.image, and for font I'm going to use self.font. Okay, so now we're good to go, and we want to think about what information do we need here when initializing these instance variables from the main function, right? We want to think about what parameters to define here for the constructor. So do we need this? Well, we could, but it's not necessary, right? We could just have everything be in Britannic bold. Do we need this? Yes, I would say so, right? Because we want our different text objects to be different sizes. So I would say comma size is our first parameter. And then do I need this? Yes, I do need that, right? Because every text object is going to say different text. So I'm going to say text right there. And then we are going to need the one. No, that's okay. The color, we might need color, right? But for now, let's just not have that, just to keep things simple. But in the future, we are going to make sure that our fonts are different colors, and you might want to define that as one of the parameters for the text class. Do I need this? Yes, that's the X position of the text object. This is the Y position of the text object, right? So I do need that. So I'm going to say XPOS and I'm going to say YPOS. Okay, so now that I define them all, I want to use them to initialize my my object. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the size and put it right there. I'm going to grab my text and put it right here. Grab my XPOS and put it right here as the first argument of move, and my YPOS and put it here as my second argument to move. And I think that's about it, right? So now when we're downstairs and we create a text object, we're going to give it this information, and it's going to come up here into the constructor, create all of these instance variables using the information that you give to the constructor, and voila, we have a set of variables to describe any text object that you want to appear on your screen.